It's about that time.
Stoned on Sports.
How's it going, everybody? You're tuned into Stoned on Sports Fantasy Football. My name is Matt. Got Kyle here with me as well, and we are here to lead you into the Thursday night football game, the Ravens and the Bengals. And how are we going to do it? We got some starts and sits. We've got answers to all of your roster management questions, be it trades, waiver wire pickups, anything. You name it, we'll help you solve it. You see up there on the screen, we're pushing towards 100 subscribers. So if you like what you see and you enjoy the content, and hopefully, you know, the advice we give is good, drop a like, drop a sub. We're happy to have you as part of the community. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing great. It's a new football week starting today. So Ravens, Bengals, love it. So we got 5 starts, 5 sits as usual. Every Thursday show, I see we got Captain in the chat. And Dubo, appreciate you guys stopping in there.
Going on.
Yeah, good stuff. Captain, I gotta figure out. Okay, I'll be honest. I know 0 about Discord. I got to figure that out so we can hook up on there. But anyway, let's continue. First guy we got to quarterback for you. Brock Purdy has scored 17 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games, and this week he gets a matchup versus the Bucs, making Purdy a top 10 starter this week. Do you agree, Matt?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And guess who's getting CMC back? So that offense is going to be as whole as it can be. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is not around. The matchup against Tampa is outstanding. They allow the 2nd most points per game to quarterbacks, the 3rd most red zone points per game, the 3rd most pass yards per game, and they're one of 4 teams allowing 2 or more touchdown passes per game. And we know Purdy will run a little bit too, and the Bucs allow the 4th most rush yards to QBs per game. And they've also allowed 24 or more points to QBs in each of their last 3 games. Like, holy shit. Like, I don't know you could ask for a better matchup. The Bucs have shown over the past couple of weeks that even without their 2 best wide receivers, they can still hang in games, though. And we are looking at the highest total among Sunday games. This year, Purdy is 8th in pass yards. Everyone else above him has yet to have their bye, so he's doing pretty good. But he's not as efficient this season as he was last year, but the offense has dealt with a ton of injuries. Still, he's 6th in EPA, 2nd in air yards per attempt, and he's tied for 2nd in yards per attempt. He's on pace for over 500 attempts this season. It would be a first for him, and it makes sense that his completion rate has taken a dip. His 64.5% rate is 21st, but his 2.4% completion over expected is 8th. He's averaged a league high 11.4 yards per play action pass attempt, though he's only used play action on just 19.6% of his dropbacks this season, which is the 6th lowest rate in the NFL. I think they'll be able to rectify that. 2/3 of Purdy's play action passes have traveled past the sticks this season, the highest rate in the NFL. That's a great way to stay ahead of the chains. The Buccaneers have allowed a league-high 59.7% success rate when defending against play action this season, and 48.5% of their play action passes faced have traveled past the sticks, 3rd highest rate in the NFL. You noticing a little trend there? Yeah. We've got a strength going up against a weakness. This week, I think he's a high-end QB1 option. I'll put him in the top 5 confidently.
Yeah, I love that he's been, rushing for touchdowns too. And, that might not last really past this week with CMC coming back. But, that's going to open up. CMC being in there is going to open up things for Purdy, in the passing game too with him. So we got a couple questions in the chat. Emil, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you coming back and seeing us. Good evening to you. Just got offered Ramondre for his DJ Moore in a 14-team PPR redraft. I kind of like that. I just was so put off with DJ Moore last week and him walking off the field. Not that that's always going to matter for fantasy. You could go off, but taking a peek at the schedules too, rest of the season, I really like Ramondre's better.
Sure.
A lot of good matchups.
And
the volume's pretty good. He's, 15 or 2 weeks ago, he had 20. Last week, he had 15 touches.
Sure. Ramondre's been a low to mid running back too this season. He is dealing with a rookie quarterback that likes to run himself, But DJ Moore, last week aside, we're just not seeing the results this year that we saw last year. And they had Justin Fields at the helm. I mean, he was a 1,300-yard receiver last year.
Yeah.
He ain't sniffing that this year. I'm making that trade.
Yep, I agree. Good luck, Emil. War Eagle, welcome back. Daniels or Burrow this week? Got to make that decision here in the next hour or so because Joe Burrow plays tonight. How do you feel about that one, Matt?
So when the Bengals and Ravens played the first time around, they put up, I don't know, it was like 60 combined points. I don't think they're going to do that again tonight on the short week. And usually the second matchup, you see a decrease in scoring. Daniels has got a pretty tough matchup.
He does.
Going against the Steelers. Scary Terry is going to have his hands full. He's going to see a lot of Porter. We have seen the emergence of Noah Brown there, though, as really their number 2 receiver. That doesn't put a whole hell of a lot of confidence in me. T. Higgins is officially out tonight, so fire up your Mike Gesicki's, and along with that, I'm going to go with Joe Burrow.
I agree. Yeah, I think Daniels might have a little trouble against Pittsburgh. They've been pretty tough against quarterbacks, top 5 in the league. Alex, welcome to the show. Should he start Chase Brown tonight or wait and choose between Monty and Najee on Sunday? His other running back is JT, wide receivers JJ, Neighbors, and London in his flex. He's thinking about sitting Debo, but he's not sure.
For Chase Brown, yeah, I'm going to sit him. Baltimore is so damn good against the run. And yeah, he'll be able to make up a little bit of that in the passing game. They did bring in Khalil Herbert. He's working his way into the offense. Maybe he sees a couple carries tonight. I think it's going to be tough sledding for Chase Brown. Monty and Najee, I mean, I think they're both probably low-end running back 1 options, high-end running back 2. I think Chase is probably towards the mid-range of running back 2s this week. I'm going to sit tight and wait on Sunday.
Yeah, I would too. I agree. Let's see. Sam Johnson, welcome to the show. Appreciate you stopping in. He says with the over-under 52.5, he would go Burrow as well.
Yeah, they're expecting some points. I know we did a same game parlay here before the show and kind of jacked up the total a little bit and went under.
Yeah.
Like I said, they put up like 60 last time, 52. All right, I could see that happening.
Yep, definitely. Appreciate you guys stopping in. Reminder, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, and every Sunday at 12 noon Eastern. And give us that like and subscribe. Throw it on there if you're not subscribed already. That way you don't miss us at all.
That's it. So we just talked about DJ Moore from the Bears, but now we're going to focus on their running game. DeAndre Swift has been on an absolute tear over the past, we'll call it month. Do you think that's going to continue? And should we be starting him with confidence this week?
He had a little down game last week, rushed for just 51 yards. He did catch all 6 of his targets for over 30 yards, but he ended his 4-game streak of the touchdowns and the 100 scrimmage yards. He had 4 games in a row as well. Still scored a nice 14.5 points in PPR, though. He's been hot. You're right. Since week 4, he's averaged 20.9 fantasy points, and only Derrick Henry, Bijan, Kenneth Walker, and Alvin Kamara have produced more fantasy points than Swift's 104.5. It's pretty good. He's finished RB10 or better in 4 out of the last 5 games. I mean, that's at the beginning of the season. A lot of people probably panicked, might have traded this and that, and then he came back, and he's really been the focal point of that offense. He's averaged 1.8 yards before contact or for each attempt this season, which is great. Forced 19 missed tackles, which is the 14th most among running backs. And 54.7 of his yards are coming after contact this season. Out of 48 qualified rushers, he ranks 18th in rushing yards, 34 in yards per attempt at 4 flat. And I expect him to put up a better total this week, as he's going to face, the Patriots defense that's been pretty bad against runners lately. Since week 4, their defense have allowed 4 running backs to beat them for 18-plus fantasy points or more, including 3 of those who went for 23. Crazy. In the last 4 weeks, the Patriots have allowed running backs 600 yards, the most, on the ground, tied for the second most touchdowns with 5. They're allowing 5 a carry, which is 6th most, 5th most in PPR points per game, and 4th most in the red zone. Not good. Not good for Patriots fans, I should say, or Patriots there. So this is the perfect opportunity for, Chicago to lean back on Swift. Like I said, make him the focal point again in the offense. High to mid RB2 for me this week.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty damn good option. They need to get back to basics there in Chicago, because after a relatively hot start, things are not going the way they would want there. Brett Coleman had an interesting video earlier in the week or late last week about the state of affairs there in Chicago. And it was, 15, 20 minutes of brutal truth. Still,
it was.
The issues there aren't DeAndre Swift.
No, they're definitely not. I don't know what Matt Eberflus is doing. We got a question in the chat from Dubo. Bateman tonight or Demarcus Robinson on Monday?
I think starting tonight, you're going to see Deontay Johnson start to get worked in a little bit more, and that's going to come at the expense of Rashad Bateman and his target share. Demarcus Robinson, he's essentially just doing it with touchdowns. Neither are really good options.
It's Demarcus hasn't practiced with a toe, so if you do wait, then you're effed, or you're picking up, Tutu Atwell or something.
Tutu Atwell. That's certainly a name. Damn, dude, I don't know if there's a right answer to this. Both of them are kind of shitty options, just in light of the injury and who knows the actual severity of it and when he'll play. Like Demarcus Robinson's production has come on touchdowns, and that's it. That's not something that is sustainable. It's not something you can predict. At least we've seen a little bit more production out of Bisco. I'm looking at the damn chat. Out of Bateman. What's up, Bisco? I'm going to lean Bateman tonight on this one.
Okay.
And hold my nose while I do it.
Nice. All right. Next up, we got for you another running back. Tyrone Tracy owns the backfield with the Giants there with plenty of volume, and he gets the juiciest of matchup this week, the Panthers. They allow the most fantasy points to running backs. Take it away, Matt.
Yeah, this matchup is absolutely fantastic over in Germany, early Sunday morning. I know I'll be up making me a nice, big, probably not so nutritious breakfast, but it's going to taste good. The Panthers, they allow the most rushing points per game, and they're the only team allowing over 30 points per game to running backs. The most red zone points per game. They're one of 2 teams allowing more than 10 points per game in the red zone. The most rushing yards per game, the most rushing touchdowns, and they're bottom 10 in receiving yards allowed to running backs. They have allowed 200-yard rush games against Alvin Kamara and Tyler Algier, and Bijan went for 95 in the same game. Algier went for 100. Among runners with 85 or more attempts, his 5 flat yards per carry is tied for 6th. Since assuming the starting role in week 5, he's 13th in total points, but just 23rd in points per game. He's got 3 games with 10 or more points and 2 over 20. Like you mentioned a minute ago, he's taken over the backfield in New York. Over the last 3 games with Devin Singletary active, he's averaging 12.5 points per game, 65% snap share, 57% rush share, 51% route share, and an 8% target share. Still, that offense is struggling a little bit. They're averaging just 10 points per game over the last 4 games, but it's not because of him. Since week 5, he's 4th in rush yards, 4th in yards before contact, 12th in yards after contact, 11th in broken tackles, 5th in runs of 10 or more yards, 3rd in runs over 20 yards, and 12th in receptions. And he's caught all but 2 of his targets. Typically, this isn't really an offense you're looking to invest in. I know we've fielded some questions about maybe starting Danny Dimes this week, just kind of given the matchup. I know the Panthers are going to run Bryce Young out there because why in the hell not? And speaking of the Panthers, they extended Chuba Hubbard today, but drafted Jonathan Brooks in the 2nd round. that is a very interestingly run franchise.
Yes,
We're going to take advantage of that and start Tyrone Tracy. I think he is a lock for 100 total yards. I think he's got a great shot to find the end zone. He'll finish as an RB1 this week.
Yeah, he will. And I think he'll do well. And, in fantasy, volume matters very much, the most, really. And Tracy's been getting it. So we got a couple questions in here. I see Kelsey's in here. Tyler Sperry's in here. Thoughts on Siebert, limited today? I have him as well, Tyler. So I'm waiting for the news on him, whether he's going to play. If Younghoe Koo's available, sure, you could grab him. He's a top 10 kicker this year. I think he's maybe in the top 5. Pretty close, though. 6 or 7, something like that. But Siebert's number 1 kicker in fantasy right now. So pretty nice. Hopefully you can just, put him on IR and grab Younghoe Koo when he does get put on IR. Does that make sense? I'm a little off today. It's been a week.
Hopefully.
It's been a week. Kelsey thinks you're 30. I think that's hilarious.
All I'm going to say is
few years off.
I'm old enough to know better and young enough to enjoy doing it.
Yeah, there you go. Bisco just got offered Kareem Hunt and Marvin Harrison Jr. for Myers and TJ Hawkinson. How do you feel about that? Kareem Hunt's probably got, I don't know, about 3 more weeks left. I think Pacheco's still looking at late November.
Yeah, I'm not really looking to acquire Kareem Hunt. MHJ is kind of intriguing. I think pretty much everyone out there is hoping for him to have a better second half than first half. Hawk and Myers, all right, I get it. Jacoby Myers, considering Devontae is gone, maybe he creeps up in wide receiver 2 territory, back end wide receiver 2. Hawkinson, when fully healthy, is an elite option at the position, but he's, yes, he's back and playing, but how close to 100% is he?
Right.
I think I'd hang on to Myers and Hawkinson, honestly.
He's got, he actually rosters Pacheco on IR. CD, McConkey, DJ Moore, Amari, Tillman for wide receivers, and Gesicki and Ingram for his tight ends.
Yeah, unless I'm starting 2 tight ends, I don't really see the need to acquire TJ Hawkinson. I think Evan Ingram is going to be just fine. And any difference between the two is going to be minuscule, maybe a point or 2 a week, if that. I think they're pretty even. I think Ingram is going to see more targets than Hawkinson will as well, just given the state of affairs down there in Jacksonville. I think I'm going to hold tight.
Sounds good.
Where in the hell are we at? Oh, yes.
The next guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks a lot. So coming into the season, there was buzz around Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, but almost like the forgotten rookie wide receiver is Brian Thomas Jr., and he's been doing the best out of all of them. Kyle, you think we should run him out there this week?
Yeah. Do you remember a few months ago where I was like super high on him and you were like, you're pretty high on it.
And then I remember like 5 minutes ago when you were still really high.
Yes. Yeah. There's that. So look, we don't need to tell you to start Brian Thomas Jr. That he's been great. He's just unfortunately plays for one of the worst teams in football, and he's becoming coming off that major dud from last week. And, bad games can make fantasy managers pretty reactionary. I know I'm sometimes guilty of it too. Got to stop myself. But he played through a chest bruise last week. He looked okay, but the usage and the production, suggested that he wasn't okay. Just 2 receptions on 4 targets, 22 yards, 6.2 fantasy points. He's put up 15 plus points in 4 of his previous 5 games, with 20 points in 3 of those games. Target share in week 9 was 13.3. It's a far cry from his top 30 rate of 20.3 that he saw weeks 1 through 8. Still been a strong fantasy asset on the season. 35 receptions, 595 yards, 5 touchdowns, wide receiver 11 on the season. No one frickin' saw that. 31 wide receivers have 50-plus targets this year, and Thomas is one of them. He ranks 9th in PFF receiving grade. He is 1st in yards per reception at 17 flat, just excellent. 7th in receiving yards with that 595. He's tied for 3rd with a bunch of other guys for 5 touchdowns. 5th in route participation. 4th in yak per reception at 6.4. Way to get some extra fantasy points. And he's 4th in yards per route run. We talk about yards per route run. That kind of takes into the account the number of snaps a player went into a route pattern. It's usually a better indicator of production than yards per reception or yards per target. We don't usually get always too in depth on here, but trying to educate you guys at the same time. The Week 10 matchup on paper looks great against Minnesota. They're allowing the 2nd most PPR points per game to wide receivers, a whopping 43.7. That's a ton. The 4th most receiving yards to wide receivers, tied for 4th most touchdowns allowed as well, and tied for the most 100-plus yard games allowed to wide receivers. Oh, and would you look at that? 4th most points allowed in the red zone, too, to wide receivers. A big bounce it back, I think, is coming this week. The Vikings give up a ton of yardage to outside receivers, and even if they're down, he can still rack up a ton of fantasy points in garbage time. He was limited yesterday and today, so definitely keep tabs on him.
So does your opinion change if Trevor Lawrence sits and it's Mac Jones out there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it does.
So you're not big on return of the Mac, huh?
Nope, not at all. I don't think anything can help that guy.
All right, we got some folks waiting here in the chat. Davey, found a channel. Our content's great. We appreciate it. Wants to stick with us. Willing to connect on Discord. Kyle, he's going to figure that out. We'll make a note of your username there, and we'll be in touch. Noah is asking if he should trade JT and Monty for Kyron and Najee.
That's close. It's close.
It is. That almost feels like trading just to trade.
Yeah.
Because I would likely still rather have Monty over Najee, despite Najee being on this little hot streak. Kyron, a little bit better than Taylor, but I think the difference between the two groups, when you look at them as a whole, is really negligible.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. I probably would stay pat.
All right.
Run his ass out there.
Yes. Run his ass out there. Epic Fail says Gesicki or Kyle Pitts in a PPR.
I like both matchups, but the last time the Atlanta played, I think Pitts got 0, a big fat 0. I don't think he saw any targets. I don't think he caught a ball. I like Gesicki with T. Higgins out.
Yeah, absolutely. So do I. He's been absolutely on fire the past couple of weeks. I think that streak continues tonight. Brian's in here. He wants to know, should he trade Kittle and MHJ for Kincaid and Zay?
Jesus. Ugh. Okay. Zay went off last week against Denver or whatever. He had a couple touchdowns, right?
Yes.
That is not going to fucking happen every week. It is just not, especially with the addition of Deontay Johnson there in Baltimore. It's hard for me to invest in any receivers there now, especially now. It was hard before. Now it's really hard. Would you agree?
Yeah. Right now, Flowers is on a 1,200 yard pace. All right. Which is pretty damn good. There were some people high on him coming into the season. That downgrade from Kittle to Kincaid is pretty damn big. And the upgrade between, MHJ and Zay Flowers, I think Flowers' production may dip a little, especially as we get into the colder winter months here. And with Baltimore having Derrick Henry, when they get a lead, they're sitting on the ball. Now, if they get a lead, chances are Zay helped them get there, but still. I want the Kittle and MHJ side of that deal.
Yeah, agreed. Same. What else we got? Is it safe to drop Olave at this point?
I think so. I don't think he's going to be back this year.
Yeah, it's not looking good, but we'll see. What is that? 4 concussions now in the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think he's had 3 this year.
And I think I know he had at least one when he was at that university that's located in Ohio.
Oh, lame.
Yeah, I know. Kelsey, Dobbins, Mixon, Hunt, sitting Hunt's ass down.
That's debatable.
Mixon's tough against the Lions defense, run defense.
It is. Denver's run defense, they're no slouch either.
Sure.
The Titans have a decent run defense, when they're playing everybody but Detroit. So, yeah, you've got 3 dudes with some tough matchups there.
Definitely. Chicken Big Mac. I've not tried it. I went to McDonald's, I don't know, last week, 5 days ago, something like that. Got some nuggets, had a craving. And I saw the advertisement for it, and I was like, I wonder if that's any good.
I will never know because that shit ain't going to pass my lips. All right, can I get a Big Mac minus everything? You know what? Just give me a McChicken.
Right. Bisco's back. Gesicki, Hawkinson, or Ingram this week and rest of season?
I like Gesicki this week.
Yeah, Gesicki, the volume's going to be there.
Sure. But once T. Higgins comes back, I understand Eric All is out for the season, but I think Gesicki is going to turn into a 3 for 30 guy. Between Hawk and Ingram rest of season, I like Ingram a little bit better. I think he's going to get more targets. I think he's going to get more consistent targets. Now, if Trevor Lawrence ends up getting shoulder surgery, which is kind of the rumor that's going around today, I like Hawk. Mac Jones, I thought he was going to be better than what he has been. Grand, there was some turmoil there in New England, and he got dicked over by, Bill Belichick in that merry menagerie they had at offensive coordinator. So yeah, that was a long-winded way to say Gesicki today, Ingram rest of season unless Lawrence is out.
Yeah, then it's Hawk. Good stuff. Don't tell me you don't eat Taco Bell or In-N-Out. No In-N-Outs here.
In-N-Out burger is good though. I've had it when I was in Vegas. I've had it, just pretty much every time I've been out west, Phoenix, LA. It doesn't matter where it is. Taco Bell. I will throw down on, some crunchy tacos, no cheese with the hot sauce.
You're such a doofus. All right, next up. Jesus. The Saints defensive backfield is hurting, and they just traded their best cornerback, Marshawn Lattimore, this week. I like Atlanta wide receiver Darnell Mooney this week. I think he'll have a great week. What do you think, Matt?
I think his matchup is looking as good as this mustache that you see on my face. Damn, that looks good. Mm-hmm. That looks real good. He is the wide receiver, 21 in points per game. He has 5 games of 14 or more points, including the last 2. He's also got 4 games below 10 points. So kind of up and down. Drake London's dealing with an injury. I imagine he plays, but he might be slightly limited. The Saints have been bottom 10 in points per game allowed to wide receivers, yards allowed, 5th worst yards per reception. They've been stingy in the touchdown department, but they just traded away Marshawn Lattimore to the Commies. Darnell Mooney is 9th in yards, 9th in targets, 9th in air yards, 15th in target share. He's 4th in receptions over 10 yards and 2nd in receptions over 20 yards. But he doesn't really get used a whole lot in the red zone, and he's 3rd in drops, which is not amazing. He has at least 80 yards and a touchdown in 3 of his last 5, though. In a game with one of the higher totals in the week, I think the Falcons are going to put up a decent amount of points. Right now, their implied team total is sitting at 26 points. Obviously, the Saints, they're throwing in the towel. They're done. Yeah. They've been hit by injuries. They had that little 2-game streak to start the season. Everybody thought they were going to be the shit, and it turns out they were just shit. The Falcons are going to win this game easily. I think both London and Mooney will be able to have their way with a secondary there. They were already not great, and then they lose their best player.
Yeah, so, for sure. And
he's a good start. I think he can finish in that high end wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1 territory, just like he can every single week.
I think he's going to have a big game. I honestly do. When Lattimore went out a couple weeks ago with that hamstring injury, their slot corner, Alontae Taylor, took over on the outside, and he hasn't really been that good. And he should see a lot of Darnell Mooney. Among 97 cornerbacks that have at least 130 coverage snaps, Taylor has the 7th highest catch rate allowed. Is tied for the 5th highest yards allowed per coverage snap. That's not good.
No, not particularly so.
No.
So we have talked about 5 dudes that we think are going to have a pretty damn good week. And now we've got 5 dudes who might be better suited to either lower expectations or just outright put their ass on the bench. We are going to start at quarterback in the Sunday night game. CJ Stroud. Texans are dealing with injuries in their own right. Nico Collins is eligible to come back off IR, but he's not been activated. People are freaking out, and you got to remember, just because you're eligible in 4 weeks doesn't mean your ass is going to be back in 4 weeks. With just Tank Dell and a bunch of jabronis and a admittedly good running game, I think the Texans are going to be hampered this week.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. I think last week he wasn't very great. He completed just 11 of 30 passes for 191 yards, no touchdowns. He didn't throw a pick either. He did rush the ball for about 59, 60 yards, something like that. But he also lost a fumble. Finished his QB 24. He's QB 16 on the season now, but he's QB 22 in points per game. It's just not where we thought he was going to be this year, and he's in the middle of a funk. I think he's just having trouble there. He's fallen short of 20 fantasy points in each of his past 5 games, averaging just 9.8 in the past 3. He has just 1 passing touchdown in the last 3 games. Just not. And I don't think the bad play, it's really him. I think a lot of it's due to injuries to the key receivers and poor protection from his offensive line. Since week 7, the Texans have ranked 26th in pass block win rate and have allowed the most sacks, 14 of them, and the 3rd most quarterback contacts, 40 of them. They're getting to him, and it's really causing some problems for Stroud. 25 quarterbacks have dropped back 200 or more times, and Stroud's one of them. He's 14th in PFF passing grade. He's just 19th in completion percentage at 63.5. You'd like to see that a lot higher, especially when he was just 11 for 30 last week. That's horrible. He is 6th in passing yards, so he is slinging it, especially earlier on in the season when Nico was around. I think Nico's still in the top 6, 7, or 8 in yards. Just crazy. So nuts. And I mentioned all those contacts he's been getting and sacks. He's been sacked 30 times this year, the 2nd fucking most. Getting Nico back this week would be a huge boost, but it might not matter given the tough matchup this week versus Detroit. Detroit's been pretty decent a bit against quarterbacks this week. They've limited Love, Darnold, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, and Matthew Stafford to all 18 points or less in each of their games. They allow the 13th fewest points per game to quarterbacks. They've allowed just 6 passing touchdowns all year, tied for 2nd fewest. And since week 5, they've only allowed 2. It's pretty good. They've got 11 interceptions, tied for 2nd most, and they have at least 1 pick in all 8 of their games so far. I own Stroud. That sounds bad. I roster Stroud in a league, in our big league, our contract league, and it's a super flex league, and I'm starting him in that, but that's the only thing I recommend starting him in. Redraft regular, I would not do it. Super flex, 2 QB leagues, yeah, I would.
I can dig that. Just such a disappointment this year compared to how everything went for him last year, but they just did not have the run game, and it was really 4,000 yards by force, essentially. Bisco's got a question. Cedric Tillman or Jacoby Myers rest a season in a full PPR?
I like Tillman with Winston at the helm there. I think he's going to see a lot of looks there. I agree. Winston's not that great of a quarterback, but he's better than whoever the hell's there now, Minshew or whoever the hell's throwing the ball in Vegas. I can't remember now. Somebody got hurt. Didn't O'Connell get hurt?
They got Desmond Ridder there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's ugly.
Yeah.
No.
That's gross. Cedric Tillman for me. He's got
For
a chance to be a league winner this year.
Sure. Anything else in there? No.
Negative.
All right. Another receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, blew up last week, caught 2 touchdown passes. However, this week should be a lot tougher versus that suffocating Broncos secondary. Tell us more, bud.
Yeah, last week was great, wasn't it? But remember, we don't chase last week's numbers. He had 9 targets, caught 8 of them for 86, found the end zone twice. He was a wide receiver 4 on the week, and his involvement in the KC offense has increased each week. He's each week since getting traded there. Now, granted, it's been 2 weeks, so but disregard. He draws a very tough matchup this week against the Broncos. He's going to be shadowed by Surtain, and yes, I'm going back to this well. Zay Flowers went off against the Broncos last week to the tune of 5 for 127 and 2, but old head D-Hop ain't Zay. He was working out of the slot 38% of the time and close to the line. He caught 6 of 7 targets on in-breaking routes for 70 yards, his most since week 14 of 2020. He had an 8.6 receiving EPA on those routes, and that was his most since 2018. I don't really think he's going to be a total scrub this week, but I'm expecting a lower scoring game. Right now, the total is just sitting at 42.5, and KC is laying 8 points. It gives them roughly a 25-point implied team total. Look, that Broncos pass defense as a whole is allowing 9.7 yards per reception. That's 3rd best in the league. I think D-Hop, he can return maybe wide receiver 3 value towards the back end, maybe in that like 30 to 34 range, something like that. If you want to use him as a flex, have at it. Juju is still not practicing. So it's looking like, at least from a passing perspective, it's going to be the Kelsey and D-Hop show again, with some Justin Watson and Xavier Worthy thrown in there to much lesser degrees.
Yeah.
I think this game's going under the total, quite frankly. I think this game, is going to end up being played somewhere in the high 30s, which means not a whole hell of a lot of scoring. Look, for a lot of people, DeAndre Hopkins was somebody you either drafted late or you picked up off the waiver wire. Maybe sit his ass down this week. Give him a breather. He's getting up there in years. Take this week off. Come back next week fresh. Get yourself right.
Yeah. Danzel Barrett, welcome to the show. Kittle, Gesicki, Amari Cooper, and Jennings needs 1 tight end and 1 flex. I think I still like Gesicki with the volume. He Kittle's tight end 2 on the year, sure, but there's plenty of games there where he's only going to catch 4 balls for 30 yards and you're going to be bummed. But Gesicki should see 8 targets tonight, I would assume, at least minimum. So I like him. 1 flex. It's kind of tough. Cooper's still questionable.
Yeah. And it's funny, both he and Keon Coleman are dealing with wrist injuries there in Buffalo. They must have had some very important decisions to make, and many of them to suffer injuries like that. On the flex side, if Cooper plays, I like him. Indy is so bad on the perimeter of their defense. I think he could feast. Jennings is probably going to be the 3rd target, 4th target, maybe, with CMC coming back behind Debo and Kittle and CMC. So, and even with Kittle, he's not going to be the primary target either. All signs point to Cooper. Unless he doesn't play, then I'm starting Kittle.
Yeah. And at this point, you think Jennings he's droppable. I'm thinking.
Yeah. Unless you're just incredibly desperate.
Incredibly.
We got a running back for you, and we haven't really talked about many here on the sit list just yet. The Titans draw a tough matchup in LA against Kelsey's Chargers. Pollard, his practice schedule here over the past couple of weeks has been, really iffy. Last week, I don't think he practiced at all. I think he was limited yesterday and went DNP today. Kyle, would you start Tony Pollard?
It's really tough too, because the volume's there. It's a ton, and they really need to probably back that down a little bit with the Spears hurt too. It's been kind of tough. So in week 9, he rushed the ball 28 damn times, 128 yards, caught all 3 of his targets. So for 26 yards, he was RB12 in PPR, put some RB19 on the season. And I mentioned that volume, the snap shares there too. In the last 3 games, he's over 80% in each game. He's had 72 total touches, plenty of production, just no touchdowns to speak in that time frame, which kind of hurts. Oh, he did have one called back this past week due to a holding call. So his role, the role there is elite, right? He has multiple catches in every game and has at least 16 carries in 7 of his last 8 games, or 7 of their 8 games. Including Pollard, 25 running backs have had 100 rushing attempts or more this season. Let's see where he stacks up. He's 7th best PFF rushing grade. They like him. 10th in rushing yards with 622, 11th in yards per carry at 4.4. He's 1st in yards after contact per attempt, just under 4. I love that. He's middle of the pack in missed tackles forced at 23. And he has a top 5 PFF grade in pass blocking too. Kind of probably explains the 80% snap share. He's on the field more, and he's in position to peel off of some of those blocks and catch some passes. And to piggyback off that, he's 5th in targets with 31. It's pretty good. I want to start Pollard. I really do. We know the volume is there, but it's going to be difficult against the Chargers, as Matt's alluded to. They got a top 10 run defense, really across the board. They allow the 2nd fewest PPR points per game to running backs, just 16.8. The 8th fewest rushing yards. They've allowed a total of 2 touchdowns to running backs this year, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. So, and they're the best allowed in points per game to running backs in the red zone at just 1.5. And as a team perspective, the points allowed per drive, 1.1. Best in the league. So if you need a flex, if you need an RB3 with upside, you got to start him. I can make a great case for that, but you should also have some other type of upside play locked and loaded. So again, check and make sure he's going to play. He's a DMP today.
And it's looks like they're going to get Will Levis back, which I don't know, between him and Mason Rudolph, I'm not really sure who's worse. I mean, we know more about Mason Rudolph and how shitty he is, but Will Levis is kind of still a little bit of the unknown shitty. He is a little more athletic and will run a little bit more, but Tony Pollard, man, he's got to be frustrating for folks.
Do we got any questions?
Kelsey's calling a Chargers-Yankees Super Bowl, so we'll see how that works
out. I love you, Kels. That's good stuff. All right. Another running back for you that you should think twice about. A few things are certain in life: death, taxes, and James Conner paying off as an RB2 value. I don't get it year after year. He's having one of the best seasons of his career, but Matt believes you should think twice about starting him.
It is. And there's one more thing that's a constant. James Conner getting hurt, which it hasn't happened
yet. Right.
He's been a solid high-end RB2 all season. He's got 7 games with 14 or more PPR points, including 3 straight. He's got 2 games under 10. He's got 4 100-yard games and 6 games with 18 carries. We know he gets the volume. He's a small factor in the pass game, though he does have 15 targets over his last 4 contests, and he's actually surpassed last season's receiving yard total. However, the Jets, top 10 and fewest points allowed, 2 running backs per game, and in the red zone, despite having the 4th most rush attempts against. So they're running the ball a lot against the Jets. Of course, the Jets only have a few wins, so teams are running out the clock. They've allowed 3 100-yard rushers this season: Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, and Jordan Mason. James Conner is 6th in yards, and his 62 rush yards over expected put him in the top 15 at the position. And he's another dude that's hashtag a bitch to bring down. He is 3rd in yards after contact running. He is 2nd in yards after contact receiving, and his 18 broken tackles leads the league.
He's also missed. He leads all running backs in missed tackles forced per touch.
Yes.
At 0.41. It's nuts. He's very hard to bring down. You're right.
He's got he's second in runs of 10 or more yards, though his season-long rush is only 22 yards. And he faces a stacked box at the 5th highest rate among running backs with 100 or more attempts. This game has one of the higher totals on the board this week at 46.5. I actually think it goes under that number. I'm expecting that Cardinals offense to struggle a bit. I think for me, he's maybe a flex play. If he falls in the end zone, he reaches RB2 territory. I don't necessarily know how likely that's going to be, though. The Cardinals are one of those teams. I don't think they're as good as their record, and their record's only 5-4. And you take a team like Baltimore, they're not as bad as their record. They're, 6-3, 5-3, whatever the hell it is. This is one of those illusions. I think you're going to see the Cardinals start to fade as the season goes on here. I don't necessarily want to say that his fantasy prospects are going to fade along with the team, but I think the RB2 production we've seen thus far does not continue, at least for this week.
Yeah. I know I'd like to face some stacked boxes. That's all I'm going to say. just a stack of boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
You're something else, kid.
Sometimes.
We got one more sit for you. We touched on him here a little bit earlier. Michael Pittman hasn't practiced at all this week. And earlier in the season, he was hurt and he's like, oh, I might go on IR, and then ends up playing the same week. Like, how in the hell do you navigate that chasm between those two outcomes? It's really strange.
Yeah.
Kyle, are you playing him this week?
No. Nope. Sir, I'm not. I do have him in one league. I could be forced to play him, but I'm not planning on doing it. Last week, he caught just 1 of 4 targets for 14 yards. Just pitiful, Pittman, pitiful. He's wide receiver 50 on the year. It's gross. So just 2 catches on 10 targets over the past 2 weeks. So, fantasy managers, myself included, are hoping for more with Flacco at QB. Pittman's been targeted under 20% of his routes in 5 straight games now. And when you remember he was 27-7 all last year, this isn't getting it done, right? 64 receivers with at least 190 receiving snap. He's 40th in PFF receiving grade, 31st in target rate, 35th in yards after the catch per reception, 38th in yards per route run, and he's tied for 52nd in catch rate at 55.6. He's catching 55.6% of his targets. That's not going to get it done. A lot of it has to do with Anthony, his time with Anthony Richard behind center, but this week faces the Bills team. It's given up the 6th fewest PPR points per game to wide receivers. What's more, perimeter receivers have averaged the 5th fewest points per game against Buffalo. And I'm more concerned with Pittman, who's going to be lining up against. It looks like Bills' number 1 quarterback, Christian Benford. He's been pretty good among the 70 cornerbacks with 100 coverage snaps this season. His perimeter coverage grade ranks 8th. He's top 10 in explosive plays allowed, so he's he doesn't allow many of them. 9th in targeted rate, and he's 9th in yards allowed per coverage snap at just 0.48. So, you got Pittman. He's still going to be viable, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in redraft leagues, but this is a matchup to avoid.
Yes, it absolutely is. Michael Pittman. I don't know if there's been a more disappointing wide receiver than him, setting aside injury. Amari Cooper, yeah, he's been a disappointment. Bisco was talking about him earlier, the fantasy football edging, great phrase there. I also like handcuff with benefits that you mentioned on Tuesday.
Yes.
So we got a couple questions here in the chat. Garrett's asking J.K. Dobbins or Chase Brown this week in a PPR. Dobbins against the Titans, Chase Brown going here in about a half hour against the Ravens.
So both of those are pretty tough.
They are. I'm going to lean Dobbins. I really don't want to start a running back against the Ravens if I can avoid it. I think, we were talking about Chase Brown a little bit earlier. I think it's going to be tough sledding for him tonight. rest of the season, I think he's great. He's getting the opportunity. Moss is gone. Yeah, the team traded for Herbert, but who gives two shits about Khalil Herbert?
Right.
Dobbins had a nice rebound game last week. I think the Chargers are going to win that game, and Las Vegas agrees. They're 7-point favorites. I'm going to lean Dobbins on this one, but it's closer than you would think.
I take the positive game script there for Dobbins.
We got Prime coming to us from Twitch. He's got Burrow, Saquon, Achane, Hill, Chase, Pitts, Brown, and Cup. Would you swap D-Hop or Mooney into my lineup?
Is that AJ Brown? I'm guessing.
I would assume so.
That's excellent.
It is.
Hill, Chase, Brown, Cup. I like Mooney this week, but I guess I don't really like them over anybody else. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll play Mooney and bench Tyreek Hill, because when is this finally going to happen? And then this will fucking be the week it happens.
Oh, it's Chase Brown.
Oh, it's Chase Brown. Okay.
I'd swap Brown for Mooney. Definitely not D-Hop.
No, not D-Hop against Denver, but Mooney's matchup this week is match made in heaven.
It is.
Oops, sorry, man. Go ahead.
All good. Bisco is asking DJ Moore or Amari in his flex this week. If Amari plays, it's him.
It's him. Yep, agreed. Yep. And thoughts on CD?
Should you be concerned? Yeah, I mean, I can't see
past
Dak.
Time for that.
I can't see Dak being back this year when he tore his hamstring off the bone. So you got Cooper Rush. I think CD is a mid to back end wide receiver too. Rest of season, we're not going to see anywhere near the production that we, number one, expected coming into the season. Number two, that we saw last week or the week before, where he had like 13 grabs. No, he's now maybe a 6 for 80 kind of guy with a touchdown maybe every other game, something like that.
Sure.
My thoughts. Prime's asking how the Ravens have done against the run this year statistically. Right now in a PPR, they average 20 points allowed per game.
And
they've
3.2 a carry.
Yeah.
One of the best.
Yeah, they are fantastic. They do give up 46.5 yards on the ground, through the air to running back. So there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel there. I think that has more to do with just how bad their pass defense has been.
Yeah.
They did try and shore it up by getting washed up ass Tre'Davious White for as close to free as you can possibly get in a trade in the NFL. They gave up a 7th for him and got him and a 7th back.
That's crazy.
So yeah,
we don't want him. You take him. Yeah, no,
pretty much.
Tre'Davious White's best days are definitely behind him. But yeah, no, Ravens have been damn good. They've allowed just 4 touchdowns to on the ground to running backs, and that 3.2 a carry is, what is it? Second best in the league behind the Chiefs at 3-1. So
pretty good.
So yeah, Chase Brown, definitely not the best start this week. Good things to come though. You worry about Moody, 3rd or 4th option. Is he really the 3rd or 4th option? I mean, yeah, okay. London, Bijan, then Mooney, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Pitts has been very inconsistent this year. I mean, look, Mooney is a high-end wide receiver too, and has been all season long. Not sure if you caught it earlier, but we were talking about him. Where is it at here?
Well,
yeah, he's got 5 games over 14 points, including the last 2, and he's got 4 games below 10. So he's been inconsistent, but that's what you're going to get because he's a dude that gets used further down the field. He's more of a big play receiver than Drake London or Kyle Pitts. This is just such an awesome matchup for him against a Saints defense that was already struggling, and now Marshawn Lattimore is gone. And we also know, too, that number one, even if he was still there, chances are he would get matched up against Drake London because he does better against those bigger bodied receivers. But then in the event that Drake London wasn't in and Darnell Mooney drew Marshawn Lattimore, he's the kind of receiver that he struggles against.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm good with Darnell Mooney this week. He's got one more question. Cole Kmet or Kyle Pitts?
Oh, God. That's rough. What's Kmet been doing?
I think he had a goose egg last week.
Nothing since that 2 touchdown game like a month ago.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, yeah, it's not been very good.
And in a vacuum, I would want to say Pitts, but if you're putting in Mooney as well, I don't really want to start those two together, but Pitts is the better option over Kmet.
Yep. Agreed.
So it's really, if I have to choose one and I absolutely have to make the choice, it's going to be Pitts, and I'll just roll the dice against that depleted secondary. But damn, I'm not happy about it.
Nope. Well,
good luck, Prime.
Yep. I'm calling Mooney again. He's going to have a good game this week.
He is. Also, folks, we got merch. You like the hat? You like the shirt? You get it. Hit us up on X. We'll go over all the details with you. How much are the hats? Are 25, shirts are 20. You get them both for 40. We'll get you squared away if you're interested. Just send us a DM. The DMs are open.
Yep. Prime, don't worry about it. We appreciate you guys too. Like, we'll answer all your questions. We won't leave until we've answered everything. So of course we've never got, bombarded with 100 people in here either, but guess we'll see.
But if we do, we'll be ready.
Yep, exactly. So give us that like and subscribe so you don't miss us again here Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back. Don't miss us this Sunday. We're every Sunday at 12 noon Eastern, taking all your last minute questions there before lineups lock for the day. And we'll be back then.
That's it. We'll watch the end of the Giants-Panthers game together.
Yeah, there you go. And take all your start sit questions. Hell, we bet on football a hell of a lot too. So we'll take any betting questions you got too. So
with varying degrees of success.
Right. Stay stoned, everyone. Have a great evening.